The last time I saw my son's face clearly, it was through a blur of tears. We were sitting at my kitchen table, the one my husband Robert and I bought 45 years ago. It was 3 days after Robert's funeral, and the table was buried under a mountain of paperwork that looked like a language I couldn't speak. Policy numbers, routing numbers, account passwords. It was all Greek to me. When I asked Mark, my own flesh and blood, how to log into Robert's banking portal, he sighed, the kind of heavy put-upon sigh he usually saved for traffic jams. He took the laptop, typed furiously for a moment, and then turned it back to me. "Look, you just click here," he said, pointing. I reached for the mouse, my hand trembling slightly, and accidentally closed the window. Mark threw his hands up. "Oh, for God's sake, Mom," he said, his voice laced with an impatience that cut deeper than any grief I was already feeling. "Honestly, you're a dinosaur. A sweet, lovely dinosaur, but a dinosaur nonetheless. You can't survive in this world if you can't even open a PDF. You have to let me handle this." And that was the moment it all began. The moment my son looked at his grieving mother and saw not a person, but a fossil. If you're ready for this journey, make sure you hit that subscribe button and give this a like so you don't miss the updates. And let me know in the comments what city you're watching from. It's always lovely to see where everyone is. Now, where was I? Oh yes, the kitchen table. Let me tell you about my Robert. We were married for 47 years. He was an electrical engineer, a man who saw the world in logical patterns and clean circuits. He wasn't a cold man, not at all. He was the warmest, kindest soul I've ever known, but his love language was competence. He fixed things, he handled things. Early in our marriage, I took care of the house, the kids, the garden, and he handled the bills, the insurance, the investments. It wasn't a sexist thing. It was a division of labor that worked for us. He loved gadgets and technology. He was the first person on our block to have a personal computer, a big, clunky thing that made us sound like a jet engine starting up. He found it all thrilling. I, on the other hand, found my joy in things I could touch and feel. The dough for a loaf of sourdough, the petals of the prize-winning roses in my garden, the quilts I sewed for my grandchildren. Robert used to laugh and call me his analog girl in a digital world. He thought it was endearing. He set up all the online payments, managed the retirement accounts, and showed me pictures of our grandkids on his iPad. He protected me from the parts of the modern world I found confusing and overwhelming. It was his way of caring for me. So when he had his heart attack, it wasn't just my heart that broke. The entire operating system of my life crashed. Mark, my son, and his wife Jennifer swept in like a management consulting team. They came over with binders and clipboards, their faces a mask of performative sympathy. Mark works in finance, and Jennifer is a real estate agent. They see the world in terms of assets and liabilities. In this case, I was the primary liability. "Mom, you're in no state to handle all of this," Mark said, stacking papers into neat piles. Jennifer would pat my hand and say, "We just want to take this burden off your shoulders, Carol. Let us be your rock right now." So, after the dinosaur comment, a remark I'm sure he thought was a harmless little jab, I relented. I felt foolish, ashamed, and old, so incredibly old. They drove me to the bank, to the lawyer's office. I signed papers. Power of attorney, I think? It all felt like a fog. I trusted my son. Why wouldn't I? I'd spent 40 years of my life raising him to be a good man. I thought he was just repaying the favor, stepping up when his old mom needed him. The new system was established quickly. Every Monday, Jennifer would stop by with a cheerful smile, a Tupperware of some bland casserole, and an envelope containing $500 in cash. "For your groceries and little things, honey," she'd chirp. "We've got all the big bills, the mortgage, the utilities, the insurance, all on auto pay. You don't have to worry your pretty little head about a thing." For the first few months, I was almost grateful. The grief was a thick blanket that suffocated all other thoughts. I would go to my garden club, meet my sister for lunch, and pay for everything with the cash from that envelope. It was demeaning feeling like a child getting her allowance, but I told myself it was temporary, a necessary evil until I could get my head on straight. I missed Robert so much, it was a physical ache, and the thought of trying to navigate a password recovery process felt like climbing Mount Everest. So I let my son and his wife handle it. I let them treat me like a child, and for a little while, I let them. But they made one critical mistake. They thought that just because I couldn't use a computer, I couldn't think. And just when they thought they had me completely helpless, they forgot who they were dealing with. Stick with me, because you'll want to see how this plays out. The first little red flag popped up about 6 months after Robert died. Jennifer was showing me pictures on her phone from a vacation they'd just taken to Tuscany. "Oh, we just had to get away, you know? The stress of everything," she said, trailing off, as if everything was my husband's death and my subsequent incompetence. I looked at the photos. A gorgeous villa with an infinity pool, fancy restaurant meals with glasses of red wine, Jennifer posing with a ludicrously expensive-looking leather handbag. "My goodness, that looks extravagant," I said, trying to sound happy for them. "Mark's bonus must have been very generous this year." Jennifer's smile tightened just a fraction of a degree. "Oh, you know," she said, waving a dismissive hand, "we have our investments." I didn't think much of it then, but it planted a seed. Robert and I had lived comfortably, but not extravagantly. We saved. We were careful. That Tuscan villa wasn't careful. The second red flag was the car. Mark pulled up my driveway a few weeks later in a brand new BMW, a sporty convertible. He looked like a teenager who'd just won the lottery. "What on earth is that?" I asked as he got out, beaming. "New wheels, Mom. My old clunker was on its last legs. Figured it was time for an upgrade." His old clunker was a 5-year-old Lexus that Robert had helped him buy. I knew for a fact there was nothing wrong with it. But again, I swallowed my questions. Who was I to judge how my son spent his money? Me, the dinosaur who still paid for her coffee with cash from an envelope. The real turning point, though, was about Robert's watches. He had a small collection, nothing too flashy, but 3 very nice timepieces that he adored. One was a vintage Omega his father had given him. He wore it on his wedding day. I kept them in his top dresser drawer, and every so often I'd take them out and hold them just to feel close to him. One Tuesday afternoon, I opened the drawer and the box was empty. My heart hammered against my ribs. I searched the entire bedroom, my mind racing. Had I moved them? Did I put them somewhere for safekeeping and forget? I called Mark, my voice trembling. "Mark, honey, I can't find your father's watches. The box is gone from the dresser." There was a pause on the line, a beat just long enough to be unnatural. "Oh," he said, his voice a little too casual. "Mom, don't you remember? We talked about it. With the insurance, it was better to put them in a safe deposit box at the bank, to keep them safe. You know how your memory has been lately." I froze. My memory? My memory was just fine. I would have remembered a conversation about Robert's most cherished possessions. It was a lie, a bald-faced, condescending lie. He was using my grief and my supposed incompetence as a smokescreen. He thought I was too stupid, too old, too technically illiterate to ever question him. I hung up the phone, and for the first time since Robert died,
The fog of grief was burned away by the bright, hot flame of anger. The dinosaur, he'd called me, while this dinosaur was about to learn how to bite back. The anger was a cold, hard stone in my stomach. For a week, I walked around my own house like a ghost, touching Robert's things and replaying that phone call with Mark in my head. You know how your memory has been lately. The nerve, the condescending, patronizing nerve of that boy. He and Jennifer weren't protecting me, they were handling me. They'd turned me into an item on their to-do list, a household pet that needed to be fed and managed, but certainly not consulted. They'd used my love for my husband as a weapon against me, counting on my grief to keep me blind and docile. My first move was pathetic, I admit. I took the laptop they'd left for me, a sleek silver thing that felt as alien as a spaceship dashboard, and opened it. I stared at the screen, a colorful picture of a mountain I didn't recognize. I moved my finger around on the little square pad, and the arrow moved too. A small victory. I found the icon for the internet, a little blue and green swirl, and clicked on it. A search bar appeared. I typed slowly with one finger, "How to find stolen watches." The results were a jumble of police reports, pawn shop locators, and articles about home security. It was useless. I felt that familiar wave of shame and frustration wash over me. Mark was right. I was a dinosaur.
But then I remembered the look on his face when he showed off that new BMW, the smug satisfaction. He didn't just think I was a dinosaur, he thought dinosaurs were extinct, and an extinct animal can't fight back. That's where he was wrong. I closed the laptop, a new resolve hardening inside me. If I was going to do this, I needed to learn the language of this new world. I needed an education. A few days later, I was at the grocery store, picking up my weekly copy of the local paper. Yes, the actual printed-on-paper newspaper. Tucked away in the community events section, between an ad for a chili cook-off and a meeting for the local historical society, was a small box. Silver Surfers Unite. Free introduction to computers and the internet for seniors. Every Wednesday at 10 a.m. Brentwood Public Library. No experience necessary. I felt like a sign. Brentwood was 2 towns over, a place where no one knew me. Mark and Jennifer would never think to look for me there. The next Wednesday, I told my sister I had a doctor's appointment. I put on a nice blouse, did my makeup for the first time in months, and drove my 10-year-old Buick to the Brentwood Library. I walked into the computer lab, a sterile room filled with gray machines, and felt a jolt of panic. There were about 10 other people there, all looking as bewildered as I felt. Our instructor was a young woman named Aisha. She had kind eyes, a bright purple streak in her dark hair, and a patience that seemed infinite. She started with the very basics: how to turn the computer on, what the mouse was for, the difference between a left click and a right click. I felt foolish, like I was back in kindergarten learning my ABCs. But Aisha never made us feel dumb. When my hand trembled and I accidentally clicked the wrong thing, she just smiled and said, "No worries, Carol. There's no such thing as a mistake, just a happy little accident that teaches us something new. Let's try that again." Over the next few weeks, that library became my sanctuary and my secret weapon. I learned how to create an email address, robertsroses62@email.com, a little tribute to my husband. I learned how to use a search engine to find things I was actually interested in, like new hybrid tea rose varieties and recipes for cassoulet. I even learned what a PDF was. Each small success was like a chink of light in a dark room. Mark had used technology to isolate me, but I was discovering that it could also be a tool for liberation. He was about to get exactly what he deserved, and I had a front row seat. Don't go anywhere. My big project was the bank. I knew the name of it, of course, National Allied Bank. It was the same one Robert had used for 50 years.
Aisha helped me find their website. It was bright blue and full of smiling stock photo families. A large button said, "Log in." My heart pounded. This was the moment of truth. I typed in Robert's name as the username. Invalid. The screen flashed. I tried his email. Invalid. I took a deep breath and clicked the link that said, "Forgot username or password." It asked for his bank card number. I didn't have it. It asked for his social security number. I had that, thankfully. I carefully typed it in. The next screen asked for security questions. What was the name of your first pet? What is your mother's maiden name? In what city did you meet your spouse? I answered them all. Robert's first dog was a beagle named Chester. His mother's maiden name was McLaren. We met in Cleveland. Each time the screen blinked red. Information does not match our records. I tried again and again. After the third try, a message popped up. For your security, this account has been locked. Please contact customer service. Of course. Mark had set it up. He'd changed everything. He'd likely used his own pet's name, his wife's mother's maiden name. He had locked me out of my own life, building a digital fortress around my money and daring me to get in. For a moment, sitting there in the quiet library, I felt the old despair. It was hopeless. He'd covered all his bases. Then I looked at Aisha, who was patiently showing a man named George how to attach a photo to an email, and I thought about Robert and how he never once made me feel stupid for not understanding his world, and I got angry all over again. Mark had built a digital wall, sure, but I was from a generation that knew how to get things done without the internet. It was time for this dinosaur to go analog. The next Monday, when Jennifer dropped off my cash envelope, I put on my best, confused but sweet old lady act. "You know, Jennifer dear," I began, wringing my hands just a little. "With tax time coming up, I was reading something about how it's good to have paper records for my files, you see. Could you possibly bring me the last few bank statements? Just so I have them. It would make me feel so much better." I saw the flicker in her eyes. It was a mix of pity and annoyance. "Oh, Carol, it's all online now. Nobody gets paper statements. It's terrible for the environment. Don't you worry about it. Our accountant has all the digital records. You're covered."
Oh, I know, dear. But your father-in-law, he was always so particular about his files. It feels disrespectful not to keep them up. For my peace of mind? I made my voice wobble just a little. She sighed, the way Mark did. "I'll see what I can do." She had no intention of doing it, of course. So I moved on to Plan B. I waited until the following week, got into my Buick, and drove to the main branch of National Allied Bank downtown. I wasn't Carol, the savvy senior learning about spreadsheets. I was Carol, the recently bereaved widow who was just so overwhelmed by it all. I sat down with a pleasant young man named David. I told him my husband had passed and my son was helping me, but I was so muddled and I couldn't seem to find my last few statements. He was sympathetic. He pulled up the account. "I see, Mrs. Henderson. The account is set for paperless statements, but I can certainly print the last 6 months for you right now." My hands were shaking when he handed me the stack of paper. I thanked him profusely and practically ran out of the bank. I didn't even look at them until I was home, sitting at my kitchen table, the very table where Mark had called me a dinosaur. I spread the pages out. The first 2 months looked normal. Mortgage payment, utility bills, deposits from Robert's pension and Social Security. But then, on the third statement, 3 weeks after the funeral, I saw it. It was one line tucked between a payment to the electric company and a withdrawal from an ATM. A wire transfer to a holding company I had never heard of for $250,000. I stared at that number on the bank statement until the zeros swam before my eyes. $250,000.
It was a sum so large it felt abstract, like a number you hear on the news. Robert and I had been savers our whole lives. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. That money was our nest egg, the result of decades of careful planning, skipped vacations, and his patient tending of a modest stock portfolio. It was our security. It was my security. And Mark had wired $250,000 of it to a ghost. My first instinct was primal. I wanted to call him and scream, to demand he tell me what he'd done. But the logical part of my brain, the part I inherited from Robert, took over. Yelling would get me nowhere. It would just give him and Jennifer another reason to call me hysterical and senile. He'd have a slick, reasonable explanation. It was for an investment, for a real estate opportunity, to protect the money from taxes. He'd drown me in jargon, and I'd be right back where I started, the confused old dinosaur. No, I needed proof. I needed ammunition. I folded the bank statements, slid them into a large manila envelope, and hid them at the bottom of my cedar chest, under a quilt I made for my daughter, Sarah, when she went off to college. This was going to be my war chest. My Wednesday sessions with Aisha at the library became my strategy sessions. I showed her a copy of the line item from the statement without explaining the full story. I just said I was helping a friend track down a strange transaction. "What's a holding company?" I asked. Aisha looked it up. "Well, in simple terms, it's a company that doesn't really do anything or sell anything. Its main purpose is to own other companies or assets, like stocks or real estate. Sometimes they're used for legitimate business reasons, but," she trailed off, her brow furrowing, "they can also be used to hide who really owns something. It's like putting your assets in a box and then putting that box inside another box." Mark had put my money in a box and locked it away. My next lesson with Aisha was on how to search public records. She showed me how to access the state's business registry database. I typed in the name of the holding company, MJ Sterling Holdings, LLC. My blood ran cold. MJ, Mark and Jennifer. He hadn't even tried to be clever about it. He was that arrogant, that sure of my incompetence. The official records listed the company's registered agent, the person responsible for legal matters. It was an address in a town an hour away, an office park complex. But the director of the LLC was listed as Jennifer Henderson. Jennifer, sweet smiling Jennifer who brought me bland casseroles and patted my hand, the quiet partner in crime. The anger burned white hot now. She was the one who kept me placated with $500 envelopes while they drained my life savings?
The rabbit hole got deeper. With Aisha's guidance, I learned to search county property records online. And there it was. 3 months ago, MJ Sterling Holdings, LLC, had purchased a property. It was a brand new condo in a very exclusive development by the lake. I looked at the pictures online. Gleaming hardwood floors, a kitchen with marble countertops, a balcony with a sweeping view of the water. It was listed as a rental investment. The closing price was just over $600,000. Our money had been the down payment. My Robert's life's work, my security for my old age, was now a marble-clad playground for my son and his wife. I know, this part is hard to hear, but it's important. The truth was about to come out, and it was going to be glorious. Every piece of information I found, I printed. The business registration, the property deed, the sales listing for the condo. My manila envelope in the cedar chest grew thicker and thicker. I felt like an undercover agent living a double life. During the week, I was sweet, dotty old Carol, fussing over my roses and gratefully accepting my allowance. But on Wednesdays, at the Brentwood Library, I was a detective, painstakingly assembling the case against my own son.
My biggest challenge was getting into the main account, the brokerage account where Robert had kept the bulk of his retirement portfolio. The bank account transfer was just the tip of the iceberg. I knew the real money was there. The problem was, this wasn't as simple as walking into a bank branch. It was a modern, online-only investment firm. No tellers, no friendly managers, just a login screen and a fortress of security questions. This time, when I clicked Forgot Password, the questions were different. They were things only Mark could have set up. What was your high school mascot? What is your favorite sports team? Mark's, not Robert's. It was watertight. I couldn't get in. For weeks, I was stuck. I had proof of the $250,000 transfer, but I suspected that was just the seed money. What else were they doing in my name? The breakthrough came from an unexpected place. My other child, my daughter Sarah. She's the opposite of Mark. She's an art teacher who lives a quiet life in Oregon with her husband and 2 kids. She's never been interested in money, which is probably why Mark felt so comfortable shutting her out of the whole process. He assumed she wouldn't care. Sarah and I had our weekly phone call, and I was careful to keep my voice light, not letting on that my world was collapsing. We were talking about the grandkids when she said something that made the tumblers in my mind click into place. "Oh, Mom, you'll never guess what I found," she said, laughing. "I was cleaning out the garage and found that old box of home videos from when we were kids. You know, from that gigantic camcorder Dad used to haul around everywhere. I'm sending them to a service to get them digitized. It'll be a hoot to see Mark in his old Warriors basketball uniform again." The Warriors, their high school mascot. "What service are you using, honey?" I asked, my heart thumping. "It's a little online place, super easy. It's called Legacy Box. You just mail them the tapes." Legacy. My legacy. Robert's legacy. It was all about to be stolen. After I hung up, I sat down at the laptop. I had an idea. It was a long shot, a desperate move, but it was the only one I had. Mark thought he was so smart with his digital walls, but he forgot about one crucial vulnerability, his own ego. I created a brand new anonymous email address. I went to the social media site that all the kids use, the one with all the pictures. It didn't take me long to find Jennifer's page. Her profile was public, a gleaming shrine to her fabulous life. Pictures of Tuscany, the new BMW, fancy dinners, and there, from 2 weeks ago, a photo of her and Mark clinking champagne glasses on a balcony. The caption read, "Celebrating our new lakefront venture. Big things ahead for MJ Sterling Holdings. #BossLife, investment property, blessed." I took a screenshot. The next morning, I sent an email from my anonymous address directly to Mark's work email, which I found easily on his company's website. I attached the photo Jennifer had posted and the public record of their condo purchase. The subject line was simple: "Congratulations on the new condo." The body of the email was even simpler. It was just one sentence. "Your father would be so proud of how you're investing his legacy." Then, I sat back and waited for the panic to set in. The silence after I sent that email was the loudest thing I had ever heard. Every time the phone rang, I jumped. Every car that drove down my street made me peek through the curtains. I was a bundle of nerves, a mess of adrenaline and fear. Had I gone too far? Would he figure out it was me? Part of me almost hoped he would. I wanted the confrontation. I wanted to see his face when the dutiful, doddering dinosaur he had put out to pasture showed its teeth. For 2 days, nothing happened. On the 3rd day, a Friday afternoon, Jennifer showed up, unannounced. This wasn't her usual Monday cash drop visit. She wasn't carrying a casserole. Her smile had gone, replaced by a strained, tight-lipped expression. Her perfectly styled hair looked like she'd been running her hands through it all day. "Carl, we need to talk," she said, her voice brittle.
I led her into the living room, my heart hammering against my ribs. I sat in Robert's armchair and motioned for her to take the sofa. I felt a surge of strength, of control. This was my house, my turf. Mark got a very strange email at work, she began, getting straight to the point. A disturbing, anonymous email about the condo. I feigned confusion, a skill I was becoming quite good at. Condo? Oh, you mean your new lakefront place? It looks lovely from the pictures. Such a wonderful investment for you two. Her eyes narrowed. She was trying to read me to see if I was capable of such a move. She couldn't reconcile the image of the helpless old woman she'd been managing with the person who could execute such a precise, surgical strike. "Who have you been talking to, Carol?" she asked, her voice dangerously low. "Oh, just my sister, a few of the girls from my garden club, you know." I gave a little helpless shrug. "Why? Is there a problem?" She was clearly rattled. They had built their entire scheme on the assumption of my ignorance, my digital invisibility. The anonymous email had blown a hole in their secure little world. It implied someone was watching. Someone knew. And they couldn't be sure who. Had they bragged to the wrong friend? Was there a leak in their lawyer's office? The possibilities were endless, and their paranoia was my new best friend. "No," she said, standing up abruptly. "No problem. I just wanted to check on you." It was a clumsy retreat. She practically fled the house. As she drove away, I saw her on her phone, no doubt calling Mark. Round 1, to the dinosaur. The anonymous email had its intended effect. It made them panic, and panicked people make mistakes. The very next morning, I logged into my secret email account and I had a new notification. It was from the online investment firm. It was a security alert. The password for your account was successfully changed on Saturday at 9:15 a.m. Bingo. Mark, spooked by the anonymous email and Jennifer's report that I might not be as clueless as they thought, had gone into the main investment account to check on things, probably to cover his tracks. In his haste, in his arrogance, he'd changed the password, likely to something new and complicated. But he forgot one tiny detail. When you change your password on these high-security sites, they send a confirmation to the primary email address on file. Robert had set up that account 15 years ago. And what email address had he used? Our old family email address, the one we'd had for ages through our internet provider. An account so ancient, I had completely forgotten it existed. But Robert, bless his methodical heart, had written down the password on a piece of paper tucked into the back of his old-fashioned, leather-bound address book. I hadn't opened that book since he died. My hands were trembling as I pulled it from the desk drawer. There, under the entry for internet passwords, was the key to the entire kingdom. I went back to the Brentwood Library that Monday instead of my usual Wednesday. I couldn't wait. I logged into the old family email account. It was like opening a time capsule, filled with ancient spam and email newsletters from a decade ago. But there it was, a notification from the investment firm. And better yet, at the bottom of the email was a helpful little link. "Not you? If you didn't request this change, click here to secure your account." I clicked. It took me to a security page. Because it was a trusted link sent from their own system, the level of security was lower. It didn't ask for a mascot or a favorite sports team. It asked for two things to verify my identity: Robert's date of birth and the last 4 digits of his social security number. Information I had. My fingers flew across the keyboard. A new screen appeared. Create your new password. I was in. I was actually in. The screen loaded, and for a full minute, I just stared. It wasn't numbers on a page anymore. It was my life. Stock tickers, mutual funds, bond portfolios. The total at the top of the page was staggering. It was more than I ever imagined. Mark and Jennifer hadn't just used our money for a down payment. They had opened a line of credit against my portfolio, a massive one. They had been treating my retirement account like their personal ATM.
pulling out tens of thousands of dollars at a time for the Tuscan vacation, the BMW, a whole lifestyle built on a foundation of theft and deception. He wasn't about to get exactly what he deserved. It was going to be so much worse. It was all there, a meticulous record of their greed. Dates, transaction numbers, amounts. I started printing. Page after page after page spewed from the library printer. Aisha discreet and brought me a fresh stack of paper. She never asked what I was doing, but she had a small, knowing smile. By the time I was done, I had a binder 3 inches thick. This wasn't just a manila envelope anymore. This was Exhibit A. Now I had a choice to make. I could go to the police, I could hire a lawyer and sue them, I could confront them and watch them squirm. But none of those felt right. A police report would be ugly, public, and might not even result in charges if Mark's high-priced lawyers could frame it as a family misunderstanding. A lawsuit would take years and drain what was left of my money. A confrontation would be satisfying for a moment, but then what?
No, the punishment had to fit the crime. Mark and Jennifer's crime wasn't just about money. It was about respect. They had deemed me irrelevant, obsolete, a fossil to be managed and locked away. The revenge couldn't just be about getting the money back. It had to be about proving them wrong, using the very tools they thought I was too stupid to understand. So, I formulated a plan, a quiet, systematic, and absolutely devastating plan. I spent the next 2 weeks in a flurry of activity. First, I changed the password on the investment account to something utterly unguessable, a random string of letters, numbers, and symbols that I kept on a single piece of paper in my purse. Second, I changed the primary email on the account to my new, secret Roberts Roses 62 address. I cut them off. Their digital key no longer fit the lock. Next, I went back to see David at the bank. I didn't play the dotty old lady this time. I walked in with my thick binder of evidence, sat down at his desk, and laid out the printouts from the wire transfer and the brokerage account statements. I calmly and clearly explained that my son had used a power of attorney, which I signed under duress while grieving, to systematically defraud me. To his credit, the young man's face went pale. He immediately called the branch manager, a severe-looking woman named Mrs. Gable. She listened to my story, her expression grim, as she flipped through the pages of my evidence. They saw the printouts from their own system, the documentation from the investment firm, the property records in my daughter-in-law's name. I wasn't a confused old woman. I was an organized, documented victim of elder financial abuse. They made copies of everything. They launched a fraud investigation, and, most importantly, I signed a document revoking Mark's power of attorney and freezing every joint account we had. The tap was turned off. But that was just the beginning. The real masterstroke was yet to come. It was time to show my son what a dinosaur could really do. The first sign that my plan was working came a week later. My phone rang, and it was Mark. His voice wasn't condescending or impatient this time. It was tight, confused, and bordering on panicked. "Mom, something's weird with the accounts," he said, trying to sound casual. "My login for the investment portal isn't working, and I just tried to pay the mortgage for the condo, and the payment was declined. Did you talk to the bank about something?" I took a sip of the iced tea I had sitting next to me on the patio table. The sun was warm, and my prize-winning roses had never looked more beautiful. "I did, honey," I said, my voice as calm as a summer lake.
I went down there to get a handle on my finances. It's been long enough, you know. I decided it was time to take the reins back. There was a stunned silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears grinding in his head, the desperate calculations. The password change, the frozen account, it couldn't be a coincidence. But he couldn't admit what he'd been doing, so all he could say was, "Oh, okay. Well, you probably should have told me, Mom. I could have helped you. It can be complicated." "Oh, I managed just fine," I chirped. "You'd be surprised what you can learn when you put your mind to it. You boys don't know everything." I could feel his frustration and rage simmering through the phone. I had just dismantled the machine he'd built, and he didn't even know how. I had him completely on the defensive. But freezing the accounts was just battlefield prep. The real war was about to begin. My next step involved a trip to the city. Not to see a lawyer, not yet. I went to see a man named Martin Wexler. Martin was a forensic accountant, a name I had gotten from Mrs. Gable at the bank. He was a small, neat man with wire-rimmed glasses and a mind like a steel trap. I brought him my evidence. We sat in his quiet, book-lined office for 2 hours while he went through every page, occasionally letting out a low whistle. When he was done, he looked at me over the top of his glasses. "Mrs. Henderson," he said, "what your son and his wife have done is not just unethical. It is a textbook case of fiduciary misconduct and elder financial abuse. It is blatant, it is egregious, and it is beautifully documented. Thank you for this." He wasn't thanking me for my business. He was thanking me for the pristine, undeniable trail of evidence. "So, what happens now?" I asked. "Now," he said with a thin smile, "I draft a demand letter. We are going to hit them so hard and so fast, they won't know what time it is. We're not going to sue them just for the money they took. We are going to calculate the lost investment potential, my fees, punitive damages for emotional distress, and we're going to present them with a bill that will make their eyes water. We are going to give them 2 options: full, immediate repayment and the signing over of the condo to you to be sold to recoup your losses, or this binder gets sent to the district attorney and the SEC. Their choice." The thought of it was both terrifying and exhilarating. This was it. The point of no return.
What would you do in my place? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments.
My grandmother told me this story. Thanks for watching this video. Bye bye.